The phone conversation between fantasy veterans Bob Harris and Matt Waldman is a quick and dirty rundown of players, units, or teams from Sunday's games. Feel it or fuck it is our instant verdict on the fantasy value of a player situation, not the ability, effort, or character of the player. This is just how two old-timers in this industry talk when they got a lot to cover in a little time.
Well, hello, Matt Waldman. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How's your Thanksgiving?
It was delightful. I made it through, got a lot of work done. I know you had a delightful time with friends and family. By the way, I'm Bob Harris. That's who's had a delightful time. Matt Waldman also. This is the Feel It or Fuck It podcast. We're going to do some feeling and fucking today. And we're happy to have you on board as we do so. Week 12 in the books. Week 13 coming. It's time to start, focusing. It's a funny thing about this time of year, Matt, is like in our business, there's fewer eyeballs on you this time of year because people start falling out of contention. The eyeballs that are on you are way more interested because it means way more. So it's an interesting time of the year. And we keep going hard the whole time because that's the only gear we have. Apparently Bill Belichick only has one gear, and it's that. Just in my one gear. So as I watched yesterday's games or caught the portions of it, my impression was that Bill Belichick was doing a big fuck it to all of you as he kept Mac Jones in there, despite the fact that Mac Jones had no business being in there. Until I saw Bailey Zappi go in there, and I realized the alternatives were not great for him beyond the quarterback situation, which we can discuss. Like Bill Belichick is the Patriots coach in 2025. Are you feeling that?
That's the big question for me. That's the over-under right now. Because I think he stays this year. I don't think he's going to be. They're going to try and find another quarterback. I think we'll see that. But I think if there's another disaster of a season, I think he could be out by the end of 2025. And I would say, based on what the defense has in terms of injuries and what this offensive line has looked like, I think this team will be better next year and good enough that Belichick will get another grace year, and he'll be back in 2025. I'm feeling it. How about you?
I feel that as well because the owner's not David Tepper, and sorry, Frank Reich, we hardly knew ye, sir. But we should come to expect that from David Tepper. He's not well suited to being the owner of a football team. But
how many are over
Robert Kraft seems to be though, right?
Yes.
The Steelers ownership. I mean, the more measured approach is you could tell Robert Kraft is not happy with the way things are going. He makes that perfectly clear. Also, you don't see a lot of knee-jerk reactions, in the moment. So hopefully that will continue. I kind of agree with you. I think he gets, another year to get it fixed. I heard Tom Brady's available. I don't know. Maybe not for this particular job at quarterback in New England, but I'm with you. I feel that as well. Are you feeling Brandin Cooks?
Totally feeling Brandin Cooks. Brandin Cooks has been wide receiver 7 in PPR formats for, I think, since around week 8, at least for the past 4 to 5 weeks. And when you watch him on tape, you're seeing, what's really happened here is that Mike McCarthy's offense in Dallas, they use CeeDee Lamb in the slot, and then they put Brandin Cooks probably a little bit more on the outside early on as a speedster. But really, what you wanted was Brandin Cooks in the slot because that's where he's been at his best throughout his career, and move CeeDee Lamb around and let him be the versatile star that he is, let him play outside more often. And since that's happened, now you're getting a real speedster playmaker in the slot who also understands how to work open with his quarterback, and he runs savvy routes. So you're not getting... You're kind of wasting Brandin Cooks a little bit on the outside because he's not a contested catch type of player to the degree that, say, Lamb is. But, man, in the middle of the field, it's fantastic. And I think that since they've made the switch with their offense, Brandin Cooks has looked every bit the player that Dallas hoped that they were going to get out of him, and that's driven Dak Prescott's value skyward again.
Right. And I totally agree with you feeling him. And a lot of leagues, I'm in a lot of leagues, so I draft a lot of players who I don't let go of when they don't underperform early because I got too much going on to just be looking around churning rosters in a lot of leagues. So I still have a lot of Brandin Cooks, and thankfully I do. There's a lot of players like that take their time to develop. Just a quick thought here on the Mike McCarthy scheme. I feel like, he's kind of looked down upon a little bit, and and maybe some of the residual from Green Bay, the stories upon his departure that he was more interested in his massages than his game plans, etc. But listening to Dak Prescott after Thursday's game say this is the most comfortable he's ever been in an offense, I think that's pretty telling.
Yeah, I think it is too, and I think that sometimes we have to understand that when coaches get second chances, there's probably some redeeming qualities about their skill sets that are worthwhile, and maybe those coaches learned something. Because it certainly seemed like, I know there were a lot of people who looked at Mike McCarthy and what he was doing in the off seasons, trying to get onto the Cowboys staff, that they televised and filmed and looked a lot of like grandstanding posturing, look at me kind of stuff to get your resume built up a little bit. But I think that the amount of things he was doing was actual effort. You don't do that kind of stuff just to look good. You do that stuff because you're trying to learn. So I'm certainly agreeing with you on that front. And with Cooks, I mean, let's understand that you're right. He's one of those guys that most fantasy people probably got rid of after week 4.
Yeah,
and then came to regret it, and the people who do have him are headed to the playoffs.
Right. So you mentioned something. I've been around a long time. You guys are going to be surprised out there, listeners. I'm very old, and I know it's hard to tell.
I don't see it.
But what I've learned over the course of my lifetime is a thing about there's traps, and Christian Watson. I feel like he might be a trap, or at least Thursday's game might be a trap. Christian Watson, feel him or fuck him.
I'm still feeling him long term, and I'm actually feeling him lately because if he's like wide receiver 66 right now in PPR. But if you actually look since week 8, I think he's wide receiver 22, and he's even with Romeo Doubs pretty much. They're like one ranking apart from each other, while Jaden Reed is wide receiver 7 in PPR, our frequent guy that we talk about here. But with that in mind, Watson really, since he's been startable in 3 receiver leagues, really for the past 8 weeks. And when I look at that, the thing that's improved on film for me is that he's a little more consistent with how he uses his hands. He used to have lapses. I'm not talking like Quentin Johnston bad habits, but like just sometimes brain fart kind of things where you forget. And I think he's tightened that up. His route game still has a little ways to go, but they're using him more as the vertical threat. So he's a higher variance threat than the other 2 receivers on that roster who are starters. But I would say he and Jordan Love are really starting to connect and build something there. So if you're on a deeper receiver roster, 3-4 receivers, I'm totally feeling Christian Watson. If you're looking at him as your number 2 wide receiver, yeah, fuck that. He's still too high variance.
A little bit of a home run swing for me. So you mentioned Jordan Love. Let's go back onto that roller coaster and see where we're at in the journey of Jordan Love. Are we feeling him, or are we starting to feel him a little more? I mean, it's been like early on we saw the touchdowns were what we're carrying him as a fantasy prospect, right? And the completion percentage was horrible. Or do we feel like he's making progress?
Absolutely making progress. I am now beginning to feel him enough to say I'm optimistic about the potential to build around him in a dynasty format. And definitely this was a guy that back in week 4, week 5, I said, look, if your team's just gone to shit that fast and you're in week 5 and you're like, I've got to fix something, trade away your top quarterback and roll with Jordan Love. Now, this was at a time that Jordan Love went through a slump between weeks 4 and 7, where he was like quarterback 22. But since that time, he's actually a top 10 quarterback in terms of points. And when you look at what he's doing better, well, the Detroit game's really telling, because the first Detroit game at Lambeau Field, the Lions blitzed him and played man-to-man, and he looked thoroughly confused after he played the Falcons and the Bears and just was able to look a lot, produce a lot better. This game against the Lions in Detroit, they played man and they had pressure packages. The Packers offensive line picked up the pressure better, but Jordan Love, to his credit, also did a good job of really finding the open man and not being afraid to throw the ball into tighter windows and do so with good placement and accuracy. So I think that's real progress with him. He's still going to be up and down for you, but overall, I think you can still ride him with the level of competition that he's going to face down the stretch. And I still think he's a player you could take the chance on trying to build around in a dynasty league, because I think you're going to get him late enough that it's a value.
Yeah, I have some shares in Dynasty where I don't necessarily need to build around them, but depending on what I could, maybe gives me a little more flexibility with some of my other quarterbacks in those leagues if he comes on a little bit. So yeah, I'm feeling that. I'm feeling the same. Like I said this going in. I mean, it felt like the Packers, being a relatively responsible organization, probably weren't letting Aaron Rodgers flee the scene without thinking, or putting up more of a fight without thinking they had something. Right. And so, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but they certainly thought that. And I feel like they're a pretty competent organization for the most part. So I gave them a little bit of a pass there and thinking, okay, let's see what happens. I feel like we're seeing it. And something else that, Ryan Gutekunst said, as they went into the season is, they surrounded him with young receivers because they wanted them to grow together. That to me suggested they think this is not like if fortunately David Tepper does not run that organization.
No.
Everybody would be gone. But this is a project for them. So I'm with you on this one. So last week, we heard after the game, Najee Harris in Pittsburgh speak at length about his dissatisfaction with the offense. So much so that the media people were, okay, time to go, Najee. No, it's not. I mean, it was one of those like awkward kind of things. And then there was the coordinator change, a rare change for the Pittsburgh Steelers, first time an in-season coaching change since like 1941 or something. So and I thought it was interesting that I didn't hear a word out of Najee Harris. Declined interview requests. Nobody was talking about him. He wasn't talking. Other players were. He went eerily silent. And I thought, is he in trouble? Is there something going on here? Then he comes out, and apparently he was just bottling up a bunch of aggression, because he came out running angry, I thought, in this game, first game with the new coordinators. I thought he looked really good. Najee Harris, feel him or fuck him the rest of the season.
Totally feeling him. And I still think he's a dented can prospect that you can take advantage of and get at value, because everybody's still hot and bothered about Jalin Warren, who certainly played well, and they split time. They did, but Harris ain't going anywhere, and I think that this team is going to figure out better ways to maximize what Harris does best. And Harris has more ceiling than Jalin Warren. I feel that way. I don't think Jalin Warren is the next Maurice Jones-Drew, but I do think Najee Harris has the potential to be the next top Steelers back, and with Warren is kind of a really productive complement.
Well, I know MJD, and I can tell you he doesn't think anybody is the next MJD, so some authority out there.
Well, look, when you're that short, you got to have confidence. That's the way I look at it. I've always liked him. Dude. I'll say this about MJD. If MJD played in this era, in this era with spread offenses, he would have been he might have been the best back of this era. I mean, he would have been up there with McCaffrey, if you ask me.
He's a good dude.
Yeah.
Devin Singletary and I'm with you. I feel Najee Harris. Look, we're going to have to get used to this, fantasy managers. Backfields are not owned by a single person anymore. Although Devin Singletary still comes close to sole ownership of the Texans backfield, or at least he did this week. Dameon Pierce's first game back. I talked to Aaron Wilson, a longtime local observer there the night before the game, and he kind of predicted it's going to be maybe 8 touches, right? He ended up being pretty close behind Singletary. Now that could change. Bobby Sloak, we heard the offensive coordinator say they want it to be a timeshare going forward. But Devin Singletary with Pierce back, do you feel him as a regular starting commodity in fantasy?
This year, absolutely, because it's going to take a little bit of time, a couple of weeks probably, for Pierce to come all the way back. And Singletary's been playing well. So, and I think that offensive coaches, especially with running backs, because we know they don't always understand what makes a good running back. They play this hot hand approach, which basically tells you right there, if you play hot hand, you don't understand running backs. Okay, and it's not
game
because
of momentum.
Yeah, it's mainly because you don't understand the why behind what they do and what they don't. And some backs do need momentum, need that momentum or that ability to kind of get warmed up mentally to get into the flow of the game. But Singletary is one of those players that, as long as he continues playing well, they don't want to drop that, because he's moving the chains for them, and he's a good receiver. So, he and Pierce, to me, I think Pierce still has a little bit more upside, but we're not going to see that this year. It's going to be a split.
I concur. We had us a Jeff Wilson Jr. sighting on Black Friday. So if you watched the game, you saw between the Amazon commercials, they did have like kind of a game. If you weren't busy flashing your phone at the QR codes blaring at you the entire time. Way to go, Amazon. I really enjoyed that. Feeling that, Amazon. Bad. Feeling it. So Jeff Wilson, I guess, like there was no Devon Achane. He had a good game, right? And I mean, I don't know if anybody's been hanging on to him or if they were counting on him or if they picked him up hoping that he would have a little bit of a role going forward. I feel like this is totally Devon Achane dependent. What do you feel? Or just fuck it, I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, I've been one of those lone guys that in deeper leagues that have been holding on
Me
to
too.
Jeff Wilson, just because it's like,
You
we
never know.
he's good. He's good.
Right.
It's a good offense if they give him the opportunity. And I think that they finally got the memo this week without HN coming back. They were like, we gotta start handing the ball off to Waddle and handing the ball off to Hill and use them in the HN role. And then we can split Mostert and Wilson because we don't want to run Mostert down. We don't want him to get hurt when we get into the playoffs here. We want to be able to have a good running game. And I think what we've seen with Wilson is just a dependable, reliable back who understands how to run between the tackles well. So you want to hold on to that at the end of your rosters if you can afford it.
Yep, Salvon Ahmed on IR as well, so that kind of clears up a little bandwidth there because sometimes they use three guys and you never know. You get through. We got week 13. We got 6 teams on bye. Well, the Giants are on bye too, so 5 teams.
Okay.
That was a harsh apologies, Giants fans. I didn't mean that. This is the Feel It or Fuck It podcast. We feel things. We go with our feelings here. This kind of thing. Bijan Robinson. I think this is there's time for feelings and there's time for not feelings, right? So Bijan Robinson comes into this week and everyone last week, well, finally they're doing what we want with the Bijan Robinson. Is Bijan Robinson's season like perceived to be not successful based solely on the expectations of fantasy managers who invested a first-round pick in him? And if you did invest, let's say you paid Jahmyr Gibbs freight for him. Victory lap. Let's say you paid like a more reasonable price for him. Would this not be a wildly successful season for Bijan Robinson?
I would think it's a wildly successful season for him. But like you, I projected Bijan Robinson as a high-end running back 2, low-end running back 1, which is likely where he's going to finish.
Yep. It's where he's been.
So, and especially, he's going to have a great run for you at the end of the year. I think that's what's building up because I think the Falcons brass got tired of Arthur Smith and just decided to say, yep, dude, do what they say. Stop telling everybody you know better because
and also, when you give him the ball more, it looks really great, and maybe you look really great.
Yeah, maybe so. So, Robinson, I think, Robinson remains a top dynasty pick. He's certainly a redraft player that, the people who were complaining about that, you were trying to be ahead of the game, and you didn't play. You played too risky. And so if you're mad, be mad at your risk and accept it. And live with it, but don't be mad at don't sit there and say Bijan Robinson's season was a failure. Right. Your projections were a failure. That's how I would put it.
And Arthur Smith, everyone knows he's a failure too. Damn you, Arthur Smith. Okay, I feel like I don't really mean that, but I feel like everyone wants to hear it. So Giants wide receiver, the rookie Jalin Hyatt. He's very fast. He made some plays. Is this totally Tommy DeVito related, or is there something more to this Jalin Hyatt character?
We've talked about him before. This is a guy that I'd say feeling him, but fuck the situation because you just don't know what's up. But listen, DeVito has been able to get him the ball. So I would roll with him week to week at this stage if you're desperate for a wide receiver play because he's a high variance player who's capable of big plays, and he's by far the best talent at wide receiver on that team, if you ask me.
Isaiah Hodgins slander just flies out of you like you just like you don't like me even. Okay.
Well, you know how I am. I don't like slow players,
That continues. like a combination toss there.
Speed's the cleavage of NFL owners, as I often say. But in this case, Jalin Hyatt's worth it, even if the speed is the big attractive element.
So there's the famous Spider-Man meme where the two Spider-Mans are pointing at each other. Is that Royce Freeman before and after Kyren Williams' return?
It's kind of funny because I think he thought he was the odd man out in this equation when Kyren Williams would come back, and now it looks like for me, I'll take a little victory rap. I thought he'd be the Malcolm Brown role, the C.J. Anderson, Malcolm Brown role to the lead back, and that's what it's shaping up to be. So he still may be he and Samaje Perine. They may have that nice little role there where you can Zach Moss, you can count on them as desperation starters if you need them in that running back 2 position. I'm feeling it.
What about Michael Carter, the newly minted Arizona Cardinal, who dominated the fourth quarter? It was a blowout. I have questions. Is that really a thing or not? Where are you at on that?
Yeah, I'm feeling him as a long-term guy because we know he's talented. He's kind of a Giovanni Bernard type of player who just wound up in a shitty Jets organization, mess in terms of what they're trying to do. And they did him a solid to let him go. And I think that you're going to see him probably have a nice even split with James Conner next year if Conner's still in the building.
Remember, hugely successful at North Carolina with Javonte Williams in a timeshare, a pair of 1,000-yard rushers there. So he knows how that works. I'm feeling that as well. Cedric Tillman got a lot of snaps against the Denver Broncos. I think the most snaps of any wide receiver on the team. Amari Cooper got beat up a little bit. Are you feeling Cedric Tillman?
Yeah, I am, because I think that he and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who had a concussion, I think.
Yeah.
They have a little bit of a rapport. I would expect DTR to be back within a couple of weeks. So Tillman to me is the guy that I think the Browns want to see get snaps so that he gets a feel for the game heading into the offseason. And you could see the drumbeat of the talent that he had at Tennessee during the preseason. He's a decent route runner who can become, I think at some point could succeed Amari Cooper in that Cooper-esque role. I think right now, though, he's perfectly cast succeeding Donovan Peoples-Jones as more of a the number 2 in this offense, and I think that's going to continue to build.
I feel like I concur with you, so fuck that. I hate the concurrence, man. We need to argue more. That's what the people love. More of your slander on Isaiah Hodgins is what they're after.
A better player than that. I mean, we got to slander somebody better than Isaiah Hodgins.
Samaje Perine, you mentioned him, and so I feel him as the guy who is ruining my Jaleel McLaughlin shares right now.
Yeah.
Not a ton of workload. He got the touchdown. Javonte Williams has been getting the workload, right? So I'm feeling Javonte Williams. I feel like this is a little bit of a spike game, but I did have Samaje Perine in some DFS tournament lineups based on the previous week, just the playing time and fortuitous opportunities. Seems like he's getting more goal line looks. How do you feel about Samaje Perine?
Yeah, I'm feeling regret that when Jaleel McLaughlin started to play well, that I dropped my one Perine share in a league that I could use a running back for McLaughlin, and it hasn't worked out very well. Perine's a good player. I mean, he's got that Pierre Thomas type of role for Sean Payton's offense, which is the between the tackles player who can also catch the ball out of the backfield.
And pass block.
So he's kind of, he and Gus Edwards are like fun backs. I enjoy them because they're slow, and everybody gets mad at them being slow, but they just run over people with the inevitability.
Oh, so Isaiah Hodgins can't be slow, but these guys can. I get it. I see how it is.
Yeah, that's exactly. Well, if Isaiah Hodgins could run over people, then we'd be okay with that. But they don't allow that with wide receivers at the catch point. Yeah, so, but that's okay. Yeah, I'm feeling Samaje Perine. I think that he's a player. Again, end of the roster guy. You take a look at him and Carter, Tillman, the Hyatt. These are Jeff Wilson. These are all options. We're trying to tell you if you need one or two of them, these are some of the candidates that you're looking at.
If you're in a pinch, people. What about Hunter Renfrow? Is he one of those people?
No, fuck that yet. Sadly, player I like very much. But But just because he got 4 targets for 30-something yards, I mean, that could be the start of something, but let's not go overboard yet. He's probably going to be around for another 3 weeks before you'd have to actually pick him up.
There is a narrow band of players you can play in Las Vegas, and he is not one of those. He is not in that narrow band. He is outside of that. So apparently is Leonard Fournette, who can't seem to get past Ty Johnson in Buffalo to make it to the active roster. Feeling or fucking Leonard Fournette?
Oh, active roster? Well, we're still saying fuck that. But I would still feel the idea of monitoring him because you almost get this sense they're like, all right, let's get into the playoffs. We can get ourselves into the playoffs and everyone's tired, let's get the sledgehammer out. And he's going to be playing a little faster than everybody else too. He can catch out of the backfield. I would be, if you're playing playoff fantasy football, I am totally feeling the idea of Leonard Fournette in theory. That's about it, though.
I would like to see a photograph of Leonard Fournette to see what kind of condition he's in. Maybe they're working his way back. I mean, we didn't see... usually with players out there who are trying to find jobs, you see their workout videos and their sweaty, shirtless selves going through all kinds of workouts. I kind of looked. I never saw that at Leonard Fournette. So,
are you telling me that he's been eating fried turkey down in Louisiana
it's
like
possible
every day?
It's possible. It's entirely possible. So, would like to see a little more. But maybe look, he's been with the team still. They haven't turned him loose. I kind of agree with you. This is like something kind of a long play for them. But they got to make the playoffs first. So
yeah, and that may be a little more difficult than they realized 3 or 4 weeks ago. But
all right, there we have it. That's all we're feeling or fucking today. Go feel Matt Waldman on the X device at Matt Waldman. I'm at Football Die Hard, and there's all kinds of other stuff you'll find in our timelines.
Yeah, rookie scouting portfolio, early bird sales. Drops this week. I will.
I like to wait because I want to pay full price.
Well, I appreciate that, and if all you crazies out there who want to do that, I appreciate that too. But
get in there early.
You want to give me a little cash flow, or it's the first time you want to try it. You get a discount, and you'll go, the thing's already on a discount. Why am I even paying less for this after you see it? That's generally what the thought is. But you can find that at mattwaldman.com probably on Thursday.
Paying full price is still the best value out there. I mean, honestly, there's nothing like it. It is a tome. And when I say tome, all that engenders in your mind, thick and full and robust and all those things. It's fantastic. I love it. I love Matt Waldman. I'm going to go away now. Goodbye.
Love you too.